Hi, my name is Salomé Carrasco, and this summer I had the pleasure of handling grasshoppers and seeing how temperatures at different elevations impact their growth and development. So let's go on a hike up the Rocky Mountains, guys. Bring your snacks for energy and make sure to bring your sunscreen because it might get a little bit, it'll get a little bit hot up there if we're dealing with really harsh UV rays. So, you ever notice that as you're going up the mountain, actually gets it feels a lot cooler? The reason for that is that there's less atmosphere above you to trap in heat. So that's why I said sunscreen, right? Well, we can deal with heat really easily as people, as humans, like we could just sweat it off. But grasshoppers, they can't. Those poor little guys, if it's, it gets too hot, they'll overheat. So they're ectotherms, meaning that they're cold-blooded and they require the sun to warm them up and basically keep on going. So what would happen, if it got too hot, right? Well, we see that, we could just keep sweating, but the grasshoppers, their food actually starts drying up. From this image, you can see that there's an increase of the prairie land and the ice caps are receding. Now, grasshoppers, they can't put on sunscreen, so what are they going to do? They're going to go right on up so they can get fresh food to eat. Now, what would happen if high elevation ended up having very similar temperatures to lower elevation? Well, that's what climate change is doing. So from this graph, we can see here that within the calendar year, temperatures are rising over time. And you can clearly see it with this GIF here. Now, let's focus on the growing seasons from spring to fall. Take a little piece out of that, and let's look at this food web. So we got our plants, caterpillars, and birds, right? Everybody's growing how they're supposed to be growing at the speed that they're supposed to be going. And then what would happen if the temperatures started impacting these guys' cycles? Well, it looks something like this. Our bugs, they're emerging sooner, and then that impacts their feeding rate, so they won't be able to eat the soft plants, and then the birds will be on the lookout for bugs, and then it'll be too late, and it's just a big old mess. Ends up tipping everything. So who can we look at to take a quick look into how climate change is impacting these guys? Well, it turns out grasshoppers only live for one season. So let's look at these high elevation grasshoppers. They're called Melanopus boulderensis, and these guys live endemically to the Rocky Mountain region in Boulder. So that's why they got the name boulderensis. So we, in our experiment, right, we take them from the control, where they're from, and we bring them down to a lower elevation, and we're going to see how those temperatures at lower elevation are going to impact them, right? So here's what I thought, that they would grow really fast, zooming, and that they would overall, for our experiment, because we had more males and we had more females than males, they would generally show larger size. And that males, they'd be really fast at growing, and then females would grow really slow. So there would be a trade-off in that the males would be smallest at the lowest elevation site, and that females would be bigger at the lower elevation site. That's what I thought, right? So they kind of look like this. So here's how we do this, right? What do? We got to catch them, right? Put them in little snap caps. Then we got to identify who they are, right? Got to see, are they males or females? We check the genitalia with a little loop. And then we want to see, okay, well, what instar are they? What's instar? Well, that's their growth development. So every single time a grasshopper molts, they grow their wings a little bit longer. So we can tell, oh, this one's a third instar, because we have to use the loop to see its little wing buds. And then now he's getting his wing buds and they're touching. Now he's an adult. So we get all our grasshoppers, we weigh them, and then we take them from higher elevation and bring them down. So we transplant them. And we keep some at the high elevation to be able to compare our results to. So this is what our sites look like. They're a bunch of cages, and then we keep the 5 females and 3 males in each of the cages. We have 4 cages at each site. Then every 3 days, we track their development and their mass, and then thus resulting in our results. So we compare everything from this high elevation. We can see that everybody's developing how they're supposed to be, very happy boys, and then we bring them down, and whoa, look at that. They just go right on up there. They are super fast, and they're like really big. They're chunky. Now, actually, it looks like the males are growing a whole lot a whole lot faster. You know, they're all growing faster, but they're like a whole lot smaller compared to where they're from, right? So we put all this together in one big graph with all the averages, and look at what happens, actually. The largest adult males were at the middle elevation site, which I'm like, what? That's weird. And then the largest females are at the high elevation site. So complete opposite of what I thought would happen, right? And the development rate is almost exactly the same for males and females. Look at that, almost exactly the same. But of course, they're developing a lot faster. So elevation is impacting, you know, the temperatures at the elevation is impacting their development, right? So we can also see that by when we catch them and, you know, we identify them as adults. After 28 days, you know, we see our first adult at the high elevation site, and then 5 days earlier, middle elevation, 11 days earlier, low elevation. So we can see that they're overall, they are chunkier at the lower elevation sites, and that, you know, they are growing at a similar kind of rate. So that is kind of true from my hypothesis. So what does this look like, right? Well, let's look at how they're supposed to grow. They're supposed to look like this, you know, we got our emo teenager. Then this is what is happening with climate change. They're gonna start doing this. They're gonna grow a lot bigger, and they're gonna be emerging a lot sooner, and they're gonna be real chunky. So what does this mean for us, right? Well, larger grasshoppers earlier, basically. Well, that can affect the food web, the whole entire ecosystem. It, just like I said before, it just impacts everybody. And then, well, how the heck is this gonna impact us, right? Well, think about with farmers, right? They're gonna have to deal with bigger grasshoppers sooner in the year when they're trying to grow their plants. And that's gonna be a big problem. Look at these guys, they're just chomping down on all the stuff. So basically, grasshoppers have been able to give us a glimpse into how climate change may be impacting other ectotherms or insects. And insects are really crucial, important to our ecosystem. So I'd like to say thank you to all my mentors, to all the postdocs that were helping me out with the grasshoppers, and my friends and family, and everybody in RECCS, and even the little grasshoppers that bit me and pooped on me and threw up on me. Look at these guys, I love them. And these are all my resources. All right, now. Any questions?
Did it hurt when they bite you?
Yes.
You felt the bite?
Yeah, like when they're younger, they like nibble on you and you're like, oh, you're so cute. Then when they're adults, they're just like chomp. And I'm like, oh my God. Yeah, when they're adults, we color them. When they're adults, we color them. And like the abbreviations for the colors are like pink and purple, right? Pee, poo. But if they're jerks, we call them poo pee. Yeah.
I have a question too, Salomé.
Yep.
So I'm more familiar with mammals than I am with insects, and I know that the bigger mammals get, the harder it is for them to cool off because their metabolism vents more heat and that surface area to volume ratio is off. Why would bugs be getting bigger as it gets hotter?
Like I said before, when we were going on our hike, we need energy. And so with grasshoppers, they're going to be like heating up. And they're going to be burning a lot of that energy. So they're going to have to eat a lot more food to be able to compensate for that.
Understood.
Yes.
Nice job, Salomé.
Thank you.
That was so good.